Hey everyone, Marshall Couch here. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about if statements in RPA and programming. If statements are useful because they allow us to branch our logic, and we can choose if we want to go down one path or another path depending on certain criteria. An example in the business might be if a customer has a certain amount of sales, I want to send their email to a priority email inbox. Otherwise, I want to send it to a low priority inbox. Something like that. So we can choose, does it go down one task path or does it go down the other task path? Today what we're going to do is we are going to use loops, and depending on what cycle of the loop we're on or what iteration of the loop we're on, we're going to log to a few different files. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the if statements to check and see what iteration of the loop we're in, and then write to a log file. So to do that, what we're first going to do is go down to loop, and let's drag in times. So we're just going to loop a certain number of times. We will do 4 times. That'll make things nice and easy for us. Now that I've got my loop set up, I want to drag in my if-else. There are a few different options for if-else. The if exists, or if a file exists, does not exist, folder exists or does not exist. These first few options here allow us to do some validation in our RPA. If the file doesn't exist, we probably want to create it. If the window doesn't exist, we probably need to open it up. Things like that. I want to use the variable for this one. We are going to use the built-in counter variable in Automation Anywhere to make this happen. Do note that if I just drag in if-else up here, I cannot do that. I do have to choose one of these child options to drag in. So we're going to use variable. Let's go ahead and drag this in. I'm going to click down here into my if condition, and I'm going to choose edit. Here I can hit my handy dandy F2 and search for counter by just hitting C twice because I don't have any other variables set up, and I know that it's right after the clipboard variable. So this is that built-in counter variable. I'm going to insert that, and this counter is just going to tell us what iteration of the loop we're on. So it's going to start at 1 and go up to 4. What I'm going to say is if the counter variable is equal to 1, I want to do a particular thing, so I'm just going to set my value of 1 in there. Go ahead and click save. Oh, we need to choose the operator, so I'm going to say equal to. If the counter is equal to 1. Go ahead and save that. Now I need to tell it, what do I do in this case? So here, inside that if, I can add my logic, and I'm going to log to a particular file. So I'm going to drag in my log to file, and I'm going to browse to my ifs folder that I want to output this to, and I'm going to call this log 1. So if it hits 1, it's going to log to the 1.txt file. And I'm just going to say 1. We had a 1. Then I'm going to do an else if. So with these different paths in logic, there are a couple ways we can work. Maybe you just want to have 2 paths. I want to go down this path or another path. To do that, we can just use an else. Here, we're going to have 3 different paths. One is if it's in the first iteration of the loop, if the counter is equal to 1. Else if I'm going to have a second path, and here notice that I have to choose my variable. It brought me into this select condition, which you see in the if, but I have to choose which option I want. So something about else if. So I'm going to do a variable here, and now I'm going to choose 2. So I'm going to check that counter again, but now I'm going to say if it's equal to 2. So if my counter is equal to 2, I want to do something slightly different. If it's equal to 2, I'm going to save that. And if it's equal to 2, I want to log to a different file. So I'm going to find my log to file command. I'm going to drag that on top of my else if. I'm going to browse, and I'm going to put this in the same folder, but I'm going to call it 2. And so it'll be 2.txt. And here I'm just going to put a 2 to let us know that we've hit the second iteration of the loop. Save that. And now we're going to have a third path This third path is going to be the default path. So if it's not on iteration 1 and it's not on iteration 2, then it's just going to be any other iteration. To do that, we're going to use the else command. So I'm just going to drag in my else, and I don't have to do anything else. My else just gets put in there, and any logic that I want to happen, I just drag right on top of this else or below the else and above the end if. I'm going to log to file. I'm going to browse. And here I'm just going to call it my else file. So else.txt will have everything else in it. And here what I might want to say is else, and I'll put a hyphen, and I'm going to go ahead and insert my counter variable to show us what iteration of the loop we're on. So if we're not on 1 or 2, we're going to log to the else.txt file with else and then the counter. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's save this whole file. Let's give this a run to see what happens. It's going to run pretty quick because I'm not popping up any windows or anything like that. I'm going to open up my folder, and now I can see that I have my one file. So we did hit that loop once, or that iteration of the loop once. We did hit the second iteration of the loop once, and then we should have hit the else twice because we looped 4 times. So if I click on my else, I can see that we did hit the else on the 3rd iteration of that loop, and we also hit it on the 4th iteration of that loop. This is just a small example of how you can use ifs to branch your logic in your RPA. You can put as many commands in here as you want during this if. So maybe during this one, I really want to do a lot of different things. I can absolutely continue to drag in tasks or commands into this area right here. Now do keep in mind, this is going to make it longer and make it more difficult to read. So if you have code that's doing a lot of branches, it might be a little bit more difficult to see what's going on, because under certain cases it's doing this, and then maybe you have some nested ifs underneath it. Maybe you drag another if variable in here that has some other logic that now it's maybe branching multiple times. So ifs are very powerful. They allow you to do different things with your code as you're working through it. But as you're working through very long amounts of code, just keep in mind that it's going to be maybe a little bit more difficult to read over time, because it might be that my if starts up here and then it ends scrolling down a few hundred lines below. Just something to keep in mind. Hope you find this useful. Thanks for watching.